Hi friends, and welcome back to another episode of This is for the Soul, and I'm your lovely host, Brianna Sade. Here, we talk about all things mental health, personal growth, spirituality, you name it, I'ma talk about it. And this is also the space where we learn to heal and grow through those honest conversations. So, the topic of today's episode is going to be about attachment styles. A while ago, I made an episode specifically catered to the anxiously attached, but I want to explore all of the attachment styles a little deeper and even talk about the attachment theory and what that looks like. I've been single and I've dated around and I've had my intimate dealings with others. I've never really been pressed to be in a relationship, but I know that when I do get involved with someone, I do have my ways, okay? And 2 years ago, actually, I was in a situation with someone that opened up my eyes and a door for me to understand myself and how to move within my close connections moving forward, and in learning my attachment styles and how I can be better at communicating, understanding, and showing affection. So I want to share my insights, and I just want you guys to know that understanding your own attachment style can improve self-awareness, communication, and overall connections with anyone, friends, family, romantic relationships. So on today's episode, we're going to discuss the theory, the 4 attachment styles, and how to navigate them for healthier relationships. Okay, so let's talk about relationships for a second. Have you ever noticed patterns in how you show up in your connections? Like maybe you're cool with getting close to people, or maybe you start to panic when someone doesn't text back right away, or maybe you're the opposite and you're not about the intimacy and you'd rather keep things surface level because you're afraid to get in too deep. Well, if you have experienced any of those behaviors, just know that those are not random and they are a part of attachment styles. So I'm going to break them down and where they come from, what they mean, and how we can use those attachment styles to shape the way that we connect with others. So the backstory is the attachment theory comes from this psychologist. His name was John Bowlby, and he was like, hey, the way we bond with our parents or caregivers as babies basically sets the tone for how we handle relationships for the rest of our lives, which makes a whole lot of sense, to be honest, because our parents are our first ever close, intimate relationships and caregivers. Then there's this other researcher, her name's Mary Ainsworth. She came along with an experiment and she called it strange situations, and she actually watched how babies would react to their caregiver when they left the room and came back. Some were cool, some were anxious, and some acted like they didn't really care. So from that, she identified those patterns and gave them the name attachment styles. So basically how we were cared for as kids play a huge role in how safe or secure we feel with other people as adults, and this bleeds into almost every single intimate relationship in our lives. And those patterns, they just don't disappear as we grow up. You can learn how to heal them and control, but they're still gonna show up in the background. So I'm going to read the 4 attachment styles, and I want you guys to listen and really think about what your own attachment style is. There's no right or wrong answers, just a way to help you understand yourself better. So we have secure attachment, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and the disorganized attachment. First, with secure attachment, this is the regulated style. If you have this, you're probably comfortable with getting close to people, but you're also cool with giving people space. So you don't really have issues with giving your partner space. You trust them, you trust their relationship, and you don't spend a ton of time worrying about abandonment or what if they leave me. And usually this comes from having parents or caregivers who were active, consistent, and supportive in your life. Next, we have the anxious attachment. If this is you, you might find yourself craving a lot of closeness, but also worrying that people will leave or that you're not enough from them, that you're not enough for them. And you might overthink things a lot, like, why didn't they text me back? Why didn't they call me? Why haven't they been home for so long? Are they mad at me? And it can be pretty exhausting. And this is usually in cases where your caregivers were inconsistent, and sometimes your needs were met, sometimes they weren't. So as an adult, you would probably be someone who would be okay with getting the bare minimum in relationships because you want that closeness, and whatever type of closeness somebody will provide for you, you eat it up. Then we have the avoidant attachment. And if you are someone like this, you value your independence and you don't like feeling tied down. This might sound familiar because if you struggle to let people in or you feel uncomfortable with emotional closeness, this could mean that you grew up in an environment where emotions were not taken seriously, you weren't discussed, And then finally, we have the disorganized attachment, where sometimes you're also called the fearful avoidant. And this is a mixture of the avoidant and the anxious attached because you want closeness, but you're also afraid of it. And this creates the push or pull dynamic, the cat or mouse thing in your relationship. And this style is often linked to trauma or really inconsistent caregiving. So, personal story, I am a disorganized attached person. And I used to think that I was anxiously attached, but then I realized that I'm both anxious and avoidant because growing up, there was a lot of inconsistency in my life. I moved from place to place, went to different schools, met a lot of different people who have influenced my life. My dad, he was there, but he was not consistent. And my mom, she did the best that she could. I did live with my grandmother for a big chunk of my childhood, and she wasn't the most affectionate. But I had a lot going on and I had to learn how to emotionally regulate on my own. Fast forward, now it's like I do crave attachment and love, and I have a desire to be with someone, but when I like you, I'm on you bad. And I'm like that. Plus, I have had this I can fix you mentality where I've always been attracted to those avoidant people, and it can be overwhelming and it can be draining. And then on the other hand, it's like when I do attract certain people, I could be passive and avoidant myself because I like my space and my independence. And when I feel like someone's trying to insert themselves into my life, or if they could potentially be a good thing, I'll either question that for a while or self-sabotage. So it's very hot and cold for me. But yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. And this is important because these styles, they show up in every part of our relationships, and they influence how we handle intimacy, conflict, and even how we react to things like distance, rejection, and whatnot. And if you've ever felt like you're always the one chasing in a relationship or always the one pulling away, then there's probably an unknown attachment style at play, okay? But here's the thing. Just because you see yourself as one way, your attachment style is not set in stone. And if you are anxious or avoidant, that doesn't mean that you're doomed to stay that way forever. With little self-awareness, effort, and the yearning to want to change, you can move towards a more secure style. And that's the real goal, right? Learning how to connect with others in a way that feels healthy and fulfilling. So now I want to talk about how these styles can show up in romantic and platonic relationships. So in romantic relationship, your attachment styles can show up in many different ways. There's patterns of connection, conflict, and communication, right? So think about your level of trust with your partner. Like, are you able to resolve conflict easily? Can you handle distance or being away from one another? Is there a consistent consistent pattern or a set emotion or response that seems concerning and triggers you. Or you can ask yourself what dynamics of that relationship triggers you. And a lot of common pairings for relationships are the anxious avoidant type of dynamic. And this type of pairing can usually be the most toxic because of the I can fix you mentality against the I don't want to be fixed mindset. Mentality is a belief that you can do something, and a mindset is you being set in a way, right? So you're set that nothing can change, and then someone comes along with a mentality that they can change you. It just doesn't mix. And that's where I fell short a lot of times, because I had the mentality and I was always attracting someone with the mindset. It's never going to be easy to try and fix someone that doesn't want to be fixed or doesn't want to be changed or saved or turned into the ideal person for you. So there's that. But they do say opposites attract, and it's the push or pull factor that can be thrilling until it's not. The anxious person can become overbearing, while the avoidant one pushes away, and that causes conflict. Now we're going to talk about the platonic side of it, because if you are an avoidant person, you could have difficulty asking for help, wanting to depend on others for support, being vulnerable, because you do have a strong sense of independence. Like I said, it's a mindset. Like, you are set in this way about yourself that you don't want to be close to others. You don't want to have to rely on other people. You don't want to be dependent. You just want to be in your own energy, and that's okay. But sometimes you gotta let the guard down. You gotta let the barrier down. You have to allow people to help you, because you can't always do stuff by yourself. Now, if you're an anxious person, it's different, because you might be okay with asking people for help or putting in the effort. But usually you would feel like the one who's constantly putting in the effort. And a lot of your close personal relationships could feel one-sided, because if you feel like the energy of the effort is not being reciprocated at all or enough, then that's a problem, right? But as a anxious person, I had to understand that the world does not revolve around me, and that, just because I might be thinking about me or feel a certain way about something does not mean that everybody else is going to follow suit. Other people have other things going on in their lives as well, and they're not always thinking about me and what I got going on. And that's what you have to do sometimes as an anxious person. You have to kind of like separate yourself from other people. Then you get too wrapped up in how you think other people are seeing you, perceiving you, viewing you, and it turns into this spiral of things that are actually not even true. Now, if you're a disorganized attachment, it goes both ways, because you want to connect or ask people for help, and you want to be vulnerable, but you feel scared or skeptical, or you feel like something could go wrong, so you avoid it. So now we're going to talk about the signs and how we can identify these attachment styles within ourselves. And there are signs that you can look for, such as emotional triggers and patterns in your relationships. And you can observe how you respond to closeness, conflict, separation. And your response to those situations can usually pinpoint the type of attachment style that you have. Another thing that you can do is you can use self-reflection tools. You can journal. There are plenty of journal prompts on the internet that you can use to help you get a clear understanding. You can do online quizzes that can help you. And you can even seek professional help. If this is something that's really bothering you and you want to know your attachment style and how to heal and get better, therapy is great, because you can work with someone who is a professional that can guide you and give you keys and tips and advice on how to approach it from a better stance. And as far as healing and growing and moving towards secure attachments, you really just have to practice building trust with yourself, with others, not being scared to communicate, and self-regulating. So being aware and in tune with yourself, with your body, and how you react to certain things. The importance of self-compassion is your emotional awareness. Like, you have to give yourself grace, give your partner grace, give the people around you grace, because so everybody's not going to move how you move. And if you are really invested in healing and growing, what you can do is focus on repairing your relationship with yourself before you jump into it with someone else romantically, and figuring out the root of the issue and how to fix it. That's the best thing that you can do. Because if you're dating and you're getting to know yourself with other people and you realize you might not have the best attachment style, the best thing for you to do is, before you decide to get serious or take things to the next level with someone, really hone in on your issue and the root of that issue, so that way you can go into a relationship with a fresh perspective and a more secure attachment. And as far as improving relationships, there are many tools for navigating. Just because you're anxious with an avoidant person doesn't mean that's always going to be your dynamic forever. And if you choose to make that work, then there comes with setting boundaries and creating a safe space for both of you and practicing self-awareness. And then, of course, you have to compromise, learn each other's likes, dislikes, love languages, and seek help if you want to work on improving and healing your relationships together. And when you're healing from trauma, just know, like, the impacts of past wounds, they do play a role on your attachment and your steps towards recovery, which is why I emphasize to really fix yourself and your relationship with yourself before jumping into something with someone else. Because it's like, you have to unpack those wounds, figure out how to be a better person. How can you move and navigate through life without having these wounds hindering you? So if you're looking to build a more secure attachment, you can do it by yourself. But it's also going to take help, because communication is key. This is something that I'm learning too, is how to express your needs and concerns without blame, and how to listen more instead of talking, and learning how to be an ear and empathize with other people. Other things that you can do too, these are more self practices like meditation, yoga, breath work, to reduce how you react, your reactivity. Because sometimes when you're riled up and you're in the moment, you don't know what you're going to do, how you're going to act. So if you can catch yourself and just breathe and go into your situation with a more mindful approach, that will work as well. Then you have affirmations and self-soothing techniques that can change the way that you think about yourself and change the way that you think about others. Affirmations, they rewire your neurotransmitters, which help you live life with a more positive mentality. And another thing too is learning how to navigate conflict. There are a lot of steps that you can do to help yourself handle disagreements with less fear and more connection. So yeah, y'all, attachment styles are not fixed and they can evolve with effort and awareness, but understanding your style is the first step to building healthier relationships with others and not being scared to take your power back. And I really encourage you guys, my listeners, my friends, to reflect on your own attachment styles and explore how they show up in your current relationships. And if you do notice a negative pattern, and all these tips and tricks and advice that I've given you, what can you do to fix that? How can you become a better person? How can you change that anxious or avoidant attachment to something more secure? But I love you guys, and I thank you guys so much for listening. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, do what you gotta do. Follow me on Substack, YouTube, Lemonade. I'm always on those platforms, and I will talk to you guys next episode. Bye. Mwah.